Democracy 101 is where we start talking to people about fixing democracy. And so few people understand where the rules came from. Let me point out the Progressive Network has two components. One component is the Progressive Network Education Fund, which is hosting this meeting tonight. It's our nonpartisan element of our work, meaning that we don't support a party or a candidate, and we can only do limited engagement and lobbying and affecting policy in the State House, limited to the degree of a percentage of our money. And the other component is our individual members. The Education Fund has organizational members, and you have to be another nonpartisan organization to be in our organizational members that share and help us shape policy work. For instance, the social workers organization has their C3 and they're involved. Chairman Hammock is the social worker herself, but also a leader in the Black social workers and in the Social Work Association. So we help formulate policies based on what we find out from the people that are working in the fields that need policy reform. And the individual members belong to the South Carolina Progressive Network, as opposed to the South Carolina Progressive Network Education Fund. And those of you that are individual members can participate directly in political activity, endorse candidates, and we will find out as we go through this that part of our strategy is nonpartisan. It's nonpartisan when it comes to dealing with elections. It's nonpartisan when it comes to supporting candidates, because we believe George Washington was right when he warned us against having parties. There's no parties in the Constitution. It just happened because what George said. He said, if you start parties, you're going to end up with two of them fighting between themselves for money and power. And that's what we got. So the looking at how healthy our democracy is a good start. We're doing about the middle of the pack in terms of having people registered and participating in elections. But that's in the general elections and not in the elections that count, which is a primary. There were 42nd and 50 in terms of turnout and participation. And that the rules that we're operating under, it's really important that you understand who made the rules, when they made the rules, and who benefited from the rules when they made them, and what rules we follow now and who benefits from them. And so, short course, rich white guys made the rules in 1895. A gentleman named Ben Tillman, whose statue is quite the controversy again, was the author of the rules. And this was after the Constitution of 1868, which was one that followed the end of the Civil War, and that there was a presidential decree. President Johnson had a constitution that a constitutional convention, and right after the war that did not include people of color, and it was revoked by Congress. And so in 1868, the states that had been party to the Confederacy had new constitutions, and that the Constitution in South Carolina of 1868 was arguably the most democratic constitution ever done in America. It had education for all. It didn't have voting rights for women, but J.W. Whipper, who was one of the Black people elected to the House of Representatives in 1868, was the national champion in arguing that women should have the right to vote in 1868. And of course, that Congress didn't approve women's vote until 1919, and I'm still not sure that they have equal rights in South Carolina, because we never passed the Equal Rights Amendment. Women only got to be on juries in South Carolina in 1969. And so this Constitution is really significant in understanding when we talk about reconstructing democracy. We actually had a democratic Constitution once. And this is the guy we just spoke of. And Ben was an unabashed racist, a white supremacist. Went from having question of slavery, and the slave owners were beaten back into a corner for a while, and then it became in fashion to simply be a white supremacist as opposed to a slave owner. And so Ben was the champion of white supremacy. And he went on from being everything he could be in South Carolina: House member, senator, governor, served in the U.S. Congress. And he made sure that the Constitution that they passed to undo the Constitution that was 1868, which resulted in the only legislative body in America that's ever been majority black. The House of Representatives, 1868, 69, and 70 was majority black. And the Constitution of 1895 that we're still operating under was explicitly written to disenfranchise people of color. And Tillman actually, kind of an apology, so to speak, because he was posed himself as a populist, like some supremacists do and still do today, that he apologized for disenfranchising white people because he couldn't figure out a way to throw out all the black people and still be in sync with the federal 13th and 14th Amendment of the Constitution without disenfranchising white people. And that we'll find as we move through this that the disenfranchising of the people of color was in part accomplished by the way he set up the way the elections are run. This is very important. That we have a rather unique way of running elections in South Carolina that flows from this Jim Crow Constitution. Originally, it specified that the senator, and there was 46 senators, one for each county. That's not the way it works now. And that each senator, they were also all named Boss Hogg, I believe. Each senator was the appointed 3 men of good character to be the ultimate arbiters of elections in their county. And the 3 men of good character didn't say that they had to be white, but it was clear that the white senators appointed 3 men of good character to be the ultimate arbiters. And from that flowed all of these rules, that the black boxes where they had multiple boxes to figure out where you put the 8-box rule, where you put your ballot, and literacy test, and how many beans in a jar, and all kind of things that were designed to eliminate people that didn't have advantage of education and to make people of color pass tests that were stronger than the white people. So that's the rules that we inherited right on up pretty much till the early 70s, 1972 or 3. We created the South Carolina Election Commission. And it is a civil service of life, not life appointments, but they're people that serve beyond a gubernatorial term. And unlike the 5 states that we hear that are making all the news about vote suppression, Georgia being the easiest and closest one to examine, the big news in Georgia was that the fellow that was running for governor against Stacey Abrams was the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State's in charge of elections. So the guy who's running for governor is in charge of elections. They purged, I've heard numbers as high as 200,000 people, mostly people of color, off the election roll from the Secretary of State's office who's running for governor. And that's amazing that he won. And so we don't have that. You register for life in South Carolina, they can't take it away from you. You go to any precinct and you demand to vote, they gotta let you vote. And they check that later at the voter certification, at the certification of the ballots after the election. So that we've got some reasonably good rules. We've got reasonably good people that are working around the elections. They're unfunded and their rules are bad. The rules they operate under are bad. That's a deeper dive we'll get into if you're that interested. So number one problem we find right now is that money dominates politics. And that's not a new problem, because if you recall, the state of South Carolina was a colony, and at the original Constitutional Convention, where we wrote the Constitution and all that stuff, the 3 people that represented South Carolina were the wealthiest white farmers with lots of slaves. And they said, South Carolina's not going to play with this new nation y'all are trying to build if you make us get rid of our slaves. So South Carolina is the reason America was created as a slave country. And so that type of money ruling politics has been here from the beginning. And if you took the type of money in most civilized countries that we take here, you'd go to jail as opposed to office. That the circumstances of how we use the tax money that supports the state and the federal money that comes back in from taxes is decided by basically the rich white guys that run the government, who really they're not really as affected as the working people are by things like education and health care. And we do find public corruption being quite a problem when there's no competition. The last 5 legislators that were indicted, 5 of them Republicans, didn't have any opposition, but they were taking up lots of money and they didn't know what to do with it, so they took it home. 36 dams failed in Richland County during the big rains a couple of years ago. And it was then when we found out there's no dam inspectors in South Carolina. There's like several dozen dam inspectors in North Carolina, but we can't afford them here. And besides, we wouldn't want to cramp the, farmer style and stuff like that. So there's things that we find out that we really wish we had, like expanding Medicaid to cover 250,000 people that don't have any health care. And they don't have a doctor to go to, and they used to go to the hospital, but when we refused the Medicaid expansion, they cut the hospital's $350 million budget for taking care of them. So they have nowhere to go now, except be a really tremendous disease vector in case we ever have a pandemic. Really thinking ahead. So gerrymandering, this is a really simple slide that shows how, if you've got this set number of people, you can apportion them. Remember reapportioning. You can apportion them where, look, the blue wins if you draw this map, and there's more of them. Oh, but look, this is a way you can draw the map, and the red win. Now keep in mind, as we quickly go through the history here in South Carolina, how you can draw these maps to rig the game. And so one of the things that is probably the most frustrating part of the life of somebody who knows the answers to these questions and works on voting issues is to watch the pontificators, the talking heads, the smart people on television when we're having riots in the street and we're having trouble with healthcare, and everybody's saying, we just got to get people to register and vote. That's it. It's going to solve all our problems. And the fact of the matter is, it probably won't, because we can't change anything, because an average of 72% of the elections have been won in the last 3 election cycles, at least, in the primary, not only the primary, in the Republican primary. So in 2016, out of over 3 million voters, 260,000 people turned out. And of that, it was the Republican Party had 8.6% of the 3 million, 260,000 people, elected a majority of the legislature in the Republican primary with 8.6% of the voters. The Democrats turned out 5.3% that year to fill the rest of to fill 3/4 of the entire legislature with 13.9% of the registered voters, filled 73% of the seats. So that also means that when the general election came around, that there were only, there were 73% of the people that went to vote only had one name on their ballot, and that translated out to 131 districts. So in 131 districts, if somebody tells you register and vote is going to make a difference, you can say, there's only one person on my ballot. We run the election protection hotline and have since 2008. The phone calls for people that call the 866 Our Vote number because there's a problem. You wouldn't believe the numbers of calls we get from people that are saying there's something wrong because there's only one party in my district. I live in Lexington County. If I'd gone to vote and stood in line, I would have gotten there and they would have told me, you can only vote Republican today. And I would have been really unhappy if I didn't know well, I am unhappy. But I would have been clueless and unhappy if I didn't realize that, yes, there's something wrong. We've allowed the politicians to draw their own lines. And all over the state, people went to vote. And there was no Democratic primary on a statewide level. And so if you were in one of the majority of the counties that there were safe seats, there's no primary if there's no opposition. And this is Richland County. This is who we're dealing with right now. And you can see over here, they're squeaking by with only 99.31% of the vote. And they even had primary opposition, but general opposition was none. This 99 is attributed to all the people that turned out and voted for them in the general. We think that's cheating because their name didn't even show up in the primary. And we know, because we count people that turned out in the primary, there were only like 5%, I think it went up to, in 2018, went up to like 13 or 14% of Democrats because they were really concerned because those crazy guys taking over the government, we all got to go vote, didn't change anything. Didn't change a damn thing. The same number of Democrats seats, or 44 Democratic seats, and the rest were Republican seats, because were packed into the same districts, because the incumbents get to decide where you go to vote. And the incumbents sure as hell aren't going to want me in their district if they've like got a problem with people that are pushing people to be progressive. And they literally, we know people. I mean, Joe Neal, Representative Neal, who passed unfortunately a couple of years ago for being. It was a situation that wouldn't have happened had he not been a man of color, or I believe, and the family believes, and the hospital believes, because they offered a settlement before there was a suit. But Joe Neal sat through any number of Democratic redistricting meetings. I know friends on the other side of the aisle, Republicans, a few of them, that sat through the same thing. Senator Phil Levinas has been one of our supporters since he served 32 years. In the 90s, there were at least four different redistricting things, because they, being the Republican dominant party, gets to be the one that signs off on what goes forward. And so we have these negotiations literally about, you take that subdivision or you take those people, that go on in both parties. The Democrats can't change the outcome, but they can change the shape of their district. And it is not only legitimate, but the House actually has in their rules that partisan gerrymandering to protect the incumbents is not only legal, but it is practice. And the federal courts have ruled that that is not illegal. That was a 2013 Supreme Court ruling. And so this is what we get in Richland County. And you can see this, and you're welcome to have this PowerPoint. And I want to show you this in Horry County. Richland County is a Democratic county. It's gerrymandered. The Democrats drew the lines. Horry County is a Republican county. Republicans drew the lines. So this is bipartisan opportunity to choose your voters. So if the politicians choose their voters, they're more likely to win. This is why we're having this meeting tonight, because we believe the voters should choose the politicians. This is a really novel concept that hadn't been practiced in this country, called democracy. This is what democracy doesn't look like in South Carolina today. We've taken the Fair Maps plan that we introduced as legislation in 2018, and we started working on that in 2017, and we have been working on redistricting plans going back to 2020, and we're the only group that's pushing the concept of competitiveness. All the Democrats have plans that make there more Democratic districts, but they're still a minority. And all the Republican plans have Republicans being the majority. And so the easiest way to see this is when we got a new congressional district in 2010. Yeah, that's the last decade. In 2010, South Carolina's population grew to the point that we gained a congressional district. And so that 7th district, everybody felt, or at least the people that could count, said that if a third of the people in South Carolina are of color and we had 6 seats, it would have been equitable, Democratic, to have 2 of those 6 seats be winnable by people of color. And so, of course, when we got the 7th district, slam dunk, got to be district of color. Well, it wasn't. And what happened is that there's no districts. There's only one district of the ones that are dominated by all these reds, are the way we have it now, are the Republican districts, and that they only one that is even close to being like only 40% white is the 2nd district. And so all the rest are in the 20s and high 20s. In Jim Clyburn's district, which is a very large blue district where we pack all the black people, they get to vote, but they can only vote for the same guy, which means their vote is you got to divide it down to get the percentage of the value of your vote if all these people only have 1 vote in Congress. And it's the same thing in the House and the Senate. Put all the people in one district, they all get to vote, but they only vote for the same person. And so we have maps that we've drawn using a competitive metric as one of the criteria. This is the only plan out there that uses that term, that word, that concept. And our belief is, like in the 2010 redistricting, Gilda Cobb Hunter, one of our founders and a representative from Orangeburg and a terrific woman, she had the only maps on the table. There were no majority black districts. Oh my goodness, what does that mean? Well, it means that we had two that were in the high 40s that were winnable, but by spreading out the Black population, it made a third one potentially winnable. And it helped leverage up the, if you did that statewide, you would change it. We don't have our version of the new maps showing, but if you looked at our metric and you hired a high school kid to run a computer to do the new redistricting in 2010, the districting for the census we're going to get back next April 1, then these maps would be literally, if you use that 10% competitive district, meaning that the winner wins by no more than 59.9%, you would end up with 85 competitive districts that the winner would have to represent people that don't look and think just like them to be able to win. That's what democracy looks like. You represent the people in your district, not just the 8.6% that look just like you and believe God, guns, and guts are the only thing you can vote for, and it doesn't matter about education or healthcare or environment. That's the only way we can change the policies coming out of the South Carolina legislature, is by changing the way we apportion the people after a census. This is our 10-year opportunity to do so. So how do we fight gerrymandering? We can't legislate our way out because we can't expect the people to give up power. We can't litigate our way out. The Supreme Court said, and I actually agree with them. Our analysis has been a long time that the Constitution doesn't give the federal government the power to tell us how to run our elections. The only time they've given states an order was the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It's part of the laws now. It's part of the Constitution that you can't deprive people of the right to be able to vote for their choice. You can deprive them of their choices and they still get to vote. And so that's an argument I've been having with the Justice Department that has a civil rights division, that has a voting rights section, that has a South Carolina desk for the last 25 years. And talking to people, well, y'all, this looks kind of racial, like racial gerrymandering. Well, that's your problem because you have to fix that in elections. And you can't get there from here. We can't legislate our way out. We can't litigate our way out. We're going to have to organize our way out. And that's why you're here this evening. So our plan, I've already mentioned, it's the only one that we can actually pull off. And the way we've come up with this is something that, to my knowledge, has never been done in South Carolina. And that's the citizens using the statutory authority of citizens to be able to put an issue before either a county or a municipal government with 15% of the registered voters signing something. And we can make a law, we can make a regulation, a resolution that the county council, and this is the important word when you're playing politics, shall adopt, not may adopt, shall adopt. This is not like a petition you signed from Move On or something that they took and put in the trash can. If we take up 15% of the signatures in Richland County, say by Labor Day, we need to give them a month to count them, and they have the option of approving it. And so we can put this before the Richland County Council, and they turn it over to the Election Commission to make sure everybody's a registered voter, which we need to vet before we turn it in so we know we've crossed that threshold. They will then say, well, okay, we'll do that. Or they'll say, no, we're going to put it on the ballot and let you vote on it. Either way, we're going to win because we know that the people want to draw the lines. They want fair maps. And we know that because, other than the fact that it's a rational thought, we paid the university $3,500 in 2016 to actually ask those questions. And it was one of those polls that you never hardly ever see. You see polls that they think 400 or 500 people on a telephone is substantive. This is the university's PhD research and policy division doing the annual state survey that talked to 900 people all over the state, self-identified themselves by their party. That document, it's a 16-page document, is at fairmaps.com, and you can see the results. And that 63% of everybody, including Republicans, think the politicians shouldn't draw their own lines. So it's a winning issue. Everybody supports it, but the politicians. There we go, back again to the problem. And so once the council gets this thing, they will have to announce it. And the Richland County Council is very supportive. I've talked to enough people to know that we'd win the vote if they have to vote on it. And that they will make an announcement, and it will get big news that the citizens of Richland County have taken up petitions and compelled the county council to make a statement to the legislative delegation, because that's what the petition says, that the voters of Richland County call on their legislative delegation, and there are 17 legislators, senators, and House members in our delegation. Only a few of them are Republicans. So that delegation is going to be told that their voters, we've got the names and addresses of the voters in their district, that their voters say, y'all better let us vote on it. Now, this has been such a difficult concept. We've been working on it for well over a year and a half, 2 years. And that what we have to do, we've realized, is show people. So that's what this model project is about. Then they threw in a pandemic to make it harder. So if we can deliver Richland County to get the petitions in by Labor Day, have a month to vet them, that news will come out before the election on November 3rd. And so when people go to the November 3rd ballots and they see, my God, it's the same people we've been voting for. There's only one name on my ticket. Maybe they'll get an understanding that, wow, we got a problem here. And so it will leverage our work. Hopefully people will flock to the concept of working in their own counties and the citizens organizing themselves to the degree that they can actually do something about taking control of their own government. Because we can wait and wait. But this is a plan. It may take a while, but it's one that we can do that they can't stop. And so we have a missing voter project we've been running since 2004 that we're running in a parallel course with our redistricting work, because we've been doing the missing voter project every year. Well, at least every election year. We do work like this 24/7, which nobody else does, no party does, no politicians do. And that we agree with the voters that voting is going to fix all their problems, because that there's when Nikki Haley beat Vince Shaheen in the first election, what was that, 2010, by 59,000 votes, less than 4%. And there were about 700,000 Black voters that stayed home. In 2013, the Affordable Care Act passed. Nikki Haley turned down over $1 billion, it was like $1.4 billion in free money to provide health care for somewhere between 235 and 250,000 poor South Carolinians. We were able to find over 200,000 of those people that had their health care given away by the Republican incumbent that were voters. We found nearly 250,000 voters that had been ripped off by the incumbent, regardless of what party it was or anything. This is somebody that went out of their way to hurt them. She said, we didn't just say no to Medicaid expansion, we said never. And she was really rude about it. And people died from that. And so I went and met with Vince Shaheen and the head of the Democratic Party, a guy named Jamie Harrison, and said, look, if y'all talk to these people, you can change the outcome of the election, because you'll be addressing the policy, really material policy needs of people in South Carolina that nobody's talking about. Jamie Harrison, who was the chair of the party at the time, he thought it was a great idea. And we just do policy work, we don't care who wins. And so Vince Shaheen ran for governor against Nikki, and he said he couldn't do that because he couldn't touch Obamacare, because he had to convince that 3 or 4% of the Republicans that didn't vote for him to vote for him. So that's that kind of losing cycle that's been practiced in politics in South Carolina, of trying to change people's minds to vote for you. And it's pretty clear that if somebody wants to vote for a Republican, they can vote for one. And so that's what we're doing with the Missing Voter Project, is touching people whose lives are not anywhere near as good as they could be if we had rational policies, and trying to get involved in a movement about policies. And so that's the slideshow. And you can have a copy of this if you put your name in the chat box, and that we will be able to have, if you like, we can put the county that you're in there, or throw that in so you can see your own statistics. So let's take some questions now. Daniel, you want to back me up here, important things that I forgot?
I believe you covered everything, Brett, with the exception so tonight was really our analysis and strategies. So you can kind of comprehend, what we're doing in terms of building a nonpartisan movement for social justice in South Carolina. in order to facilitate, to reconstruct democracy in South Carolina. This is the analysis. Tomorrow is the training for the task. That's the virtual phone bank. And so I encourage you to join us tomorrow at 7 o'clock. Everyone who's on this call will receive an email, and then you'll be getting your tool to reconstruct democracy. That's the only thing I'll add, Brett.
Yeah, and that's something that after you've heard this, you've got to decide whether you want to do it or not. And we'll send you the link so you can actually get the tool to put on your phone or your computer and be trained tomorrow and how this works. And what we're doing to kick the campaign off, again, is a model project for Richland County. We've got to get lots of counties to make this thing work and get this constitutional amendment on the ballot. Next shot is 2022, and after that's 2024. There's no limit to how many times you can redistrict. There's no limit on that, and we can keep doing this till we win. But the model that we have to do in Richland is calling Richland voters. There's nearly 300,000 Richland voters, and we're starting with the easy ones. We've got over 1,000 people that are Progressive Network members and allies. And so we're calling these warm calls as opposed to cold calls. So you'll be calling people that agree with us. It will teach us how to use the tool, sharpen our message, and get you familiar with the mechanics of it. And so let's take some questions. I'm sure that there are some.
Yeah, I have a question. You may have covered this because I had to tune in a few minutes late. But given the usual situation where some of the signatures are declared invalid, do your target numbers include or contemplate that some of the signatures are going to be thrown out?
Oh, for sure. Okay. And that's why, I mean, 10%, let's get 10% more. If we need 15, let's get, I don't know, we won't get 25, but if we need, we've been saying 35,000 signatures will carry us across the line with some room to spare. We'll sharpen that number, West. We have, before the pandemic, and we were just doing this with a few people going out on the weekends, we've got over 1,000 names already. It's not going to be that difficult because people agree with us. We've just got to figure out a way to get to them during a pandemic. And one of the things is that each of you knows people that you're talking with on your social media. Some of you are going to your churches. Some of you are like talking to your neighbor over your fence. And so it's this type of outreach that we need a lot of people outreaching. It's not like we can find 35,000 people, but each of us can find exponential numbers, and it grows like that. And that we want to get the petitions back and vet them ourselves as they're coming in. And so we can show people how to do that. And the petition, I meant to have one to show you. I could do that if you want to. I can send you one. It's at fairmapssc.com. You need to go there and read everything. I think you actually were advised to do that before you came this evening. But when you go there, right on the homepage is the Richland County petition. And it's the same petition that we'll have in 45 other counties next year. And that once we do this model, people will be more inclined to sign it. But Wes, we'll take those in, and you'll see on the petition, all we ask for is a carefully printed name, which needs to be real explicit because that can foul us up. The date of birth, numerically. And with that, we know the county, the name that's on the voter registration card, Wesley Cloyd, and we know your date of birth. And with that, thank you, Daniel. And with that information, we can look up your voter record. You can look up anybody's voting record with these three things that are on this sheet here. So when you're working a crowd, you want your petition to be really quick and easy to sign, and you don't want to ask a whole lot of questions. And you'd like to know where these people live. Well, if we've got their name and their date of birth, we can pull up their voter registration card, see where they live, see where they vote. It doesn't have their phone number, but that's the answer, Wesley. We will be doing vetting as we go, and we can job this out to anybody that's got a computer that's willing to spend some time to make sure when we turn in our petitions that very few of them will be ruled illegal. Another question? And if y'all click the little thing that says gallery view, you get to see all these lovely people at one time.
I have a question. Are you planning to run the training again another night if we have a conflict tomorrow?
For sure. For sure. This is something that, given the power of Zoom, we can do with some regularity, and we're willing to do one-on-one stuff because we're trying to get you, Sandy, to be us. The job of an organizer is to get somebody else to do your job. And
Correct.
so congratulations, Sandy. We now have your phone number. You can run the
Yeah, the other issue is that being from not Richland County or even close, I don't really know anyone there. So I can't really do a networking thing. So this is for me more, are we asking other people to, are we doing our warm calls to get other people to do the cold calls or to?
Yes. Yes, that's part of all the calls, is to encourage whoever we talk to do what it is that you're doing. Tomorrow night in the training, we'll talk about when you're doing the call, you ask this person if they'll help. And we use a little box to check, yeah, they'll help. Yeah, they want more petitions. Yes. And so we want to be reaching out and building a base of organizers as we're doing this. What county are you in?
Georgetown.
And you can get your friends in Georgetown that are concerned about gerrymandering in your Georgetown legislative delegation to understand that the way we can fix Georgetown is by getting Richland County across the line first, because it's a very Democratic county. The Progressive Network's been based in this county for 25 years now, and that if we can do this anywhere, we can do this in Richland, and we believe we can. And so that should inspire your friends in Georgetown that are unhappy with the fact that you've got a bunch of Republican wackos in your delegation. And then again, I must say we don't like Republicans or Democrats, but there's just more wackos in some places. And that you can do this no matter where you are. And Randy, is Randy with us tonight? Randy got trained yesterday. Randy's been involved with the Grand Strand Action Together, now the group in Horry County that's doing the work. And he called people in Richland County, and he had a lovely time. They had no idea where he was from, and he chatted people up, and I think got seven people not say we will help, because he's calling network members, which is, like I said, it's our easiest list to call.
Right.
That answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Anybody else? Well,
Brett, one more thing.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you identified groups like bridge clubs? Obviously, professional groups, which I will.
Well, no, that's
approach.
clearly something that we need to be doing, and I'm hoping that I haven't had time to be in a bridge club for a while, and I hope that somebody out there has.
I haven't, but I know people who have.
But I know the groups you're in. I'm going to get you to root for them.
Brett, have you made any efforts or inroads to talk with the League of Women Voters? Do they take on something like this?
Well, yes. The National League actually, very interesting. In 2010, California became the first state to actually have citizens redistricting. There's 4 states that have done it. There were 4 states that the citizens could take up petitions and put something on the state ballot to change the Constitution. Mm-hmm. We can't do that. 26 other states can't do that. The model that we're doing now could be something that could be a national model for the majority of the states. But in California, the League of Women Voters thinks that it's the greatest thing. They did a retrospective singing praises for this thing. It increased competition. It diversified the winners. So it was a very good step. In South Carolina, right now, the League is supporting a bill that I had a hand in writing, and I think I can't remember when we introduced it originally, but it was in 2016 that I worked with League people on that bill, and we tightened it up some, and I sent it to several of the national organizations that we work with, the Campaign Legal Center, which is in Chicago, led by Trevor Potter, who was a Republican who ran Obama's Election Assistance Commission, and the Southern Coalition for Economic Justice in Raleigh, North Carolina. That those 2 groups did the oral arguments in the U.S. Supreme Court on the U.S. Supreme Court's hearing of the Maryland and the Wisconsin case. That there were two states. One of them had Republican domination from gerrymandering. One had Democratic. Those are the 2. That's the case the Supreme Court ruled we can't help you. And so the lawyers that did those orals are people I've been working with for years. They're very helpful. I sent them the bill that the league is supporting now that I helped write. And they said, well, y'all better talk to Pennsylvania because they passed a bill just like that. It didn't work. And so right now, the league, and if you're in the league, you need to talk to them about this because I haven't been able to reach, I haven't even been able to get them to talk to me because they've modified, they're willing to do something that is not really going to be a fix to get something done. And the something that they want to get done is to take a bill that we participated in that has an independent commission that's appointed by the governor and the legislature. And so this commission has 6 members that elect the chair, and that elect the chair was the tweak we put in it, thinking, okay, that's going to make it better because they'll have to agree with somebody that's Democratic. But the fact is that this bill that the league is supporting, and the bill that I talked to one in Pennsylvania that wrote a bill just like it, and she said, well, you wouldn't believe what happened. The governor's people couldn't reach a decision. In the bill, their Pennsylvania bill and the South Carolina bill says if the independent commission that's appointed by the legislature can't reach a decision, it reverts to the legislature. And that's what happened. The only place this has been done was Pennsylvania. And so those of us that have been around a while realize that what will happen if there's enough pressure, the legislature will do something, but they'll do as little as they can to make it appear they've done something. And then you have to wait another 20 years to have another bite at the apple. That was like with the ethics stuff where we had 17 politicians convicted of crimes. And there was a new ethics act in 1991 that one of our members wrote that wasn't good enough. But they did it. We fixed it. And so you don't get to come back for a long time. So we feel that passing a really significant thing like to change the way elections are drawn, the maps, would be a liability if we did it wrong. And we do not believe that the dominant party is going to allow a bill that actually takes power away from them. And so that's what we want. So that's the contrast between the two. And we need to, again, I think if we just show people that this is what we're talking about, it's going to be easier to be able to have that discussion. Any other questions? Antonius, I'm glad you're with us tonight. Are you still there? I had a good discussion with Antonius. He's in the Florence area.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry about that. Yes, I'm here. I did appreciate that. Thank you so much.
And this is all clear to you?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I think I do have a pretty clear understanding. I may get with you for some follow-up, but I think for the most part.
Everybody should feel free to do that. And Antonius, if you want that, you are in Florence County, right?
In Horry County, but I got connections in Florence County too.
Well, whatever counties people want, we have the maps that you saw with the delegations and the winners and what their vote was for all 46 counties, and we'll put that online, and you can pull it off, or we can include it in your PowerPoint when we send you the PowerPoint that you saw, if you want it.
Okay. Thank you.
Sandy, you're not making noise.
Then Shirley?
Sandy's trying to say something.
Sandy.
Well, Sandy can't make herself talk.
There, now I am.
Oh,
Okay. I'm on, I couldn't read the unmute button. Are we doing any publicity around this or have any like prominent people that are spokespeople that are we spending any resources in that direction to kind of make people aware that they might be getting these phone calls and prep them for them?
Well, yes. We tried for well over a year to do what was the idea I mentioned, that we had literally a former Republican state chair and a former Republican Democratic chair going to lead this campaign, which would have been the great thing, and we would have raised a lot of money. We could have done prepaid postcards, passed them out at concerts, and had the 35,000 real quick, or statewide. So we had this concept that we would have leadership literally from the two parties saying this ain't working. It didn't work. We rode that horse for a long time. They got warm and cold and backed out. The Democrat was still willing, the Republican pulled back. And then so we shifted to the business community. the business community was the community that actually forced the Confederate flag down here in South Carolina. And that didn't work. And so we've tried, like Dick Riley, who's a good Democrat, and we approached I can't remember the name of the, Dick Riley has a leadership institute that's basically for Democrats, and there's another one, the Liberty Fellowship from Greenville. And so those are two entities that theoretically are designed to improve politics in South Carolina. So, that's obviously, let's give it to them. And they didn't want to. And so all of the people that turned it down, they had something to lose. They were wealthy white guys and they had something to lose. And so after doing that for a long time, we decided, well, let's just do it. And so before we come out of the box again, we want to work it out. That's what this model is. That's what we're doing now. And by the 4th of July, maybe we'll have some better concept that we're ready to blow the whistle on this thing and do some publicity on it.
Okay.
So we don't want to say, look at me until we like know better idea that we're doing the phone calls and it's all grooved up. That's why we need you people to call our people to make this thing smoothed out. Does that make sense to people?
Yes.
You only get to come out of the box for the first time once.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, if y'all aren't going to talk anymore, I'm going to go eat dinner.
Marjorie, you said we needed to sign up for something for you to send us some of the material.
Everybody should have a chat button is it Daniel?
Right.
Talk to them
Yes.
about where it is on their screen. It's at the bottom of my screen.
Okay.
If you click the chat button, this little box pops up that you can write in and you can chat, and that you can say, send me what you talked about, or send me the Georgetown County map that go along with the PowerPoint. And that, we want to know if I guess we can send, it doesn't cost anything. We'll send everybody the link to tomorrow night's training to use the phone bank. So if you don't want to come, you're not there, we'll know you didn't come. And you may have a conflict. Email us and say, hey, I want to learn, and we'll do another training session. And so there you go. So everybody's signed in to the chat thing. Daniel, save the chat thing. And hopefully we'll see the bulk of you tomorrow night get your list of phone numbers. And the way the thing works is really cool. You'll see it tomorrow. Us older folks and younger ones that don't type with their thumbs, if they exist, can see this virtual phone bank thing on their computer and then just use the phone to do that rather than try and do it all on one device. And so the more we learn about it, the simpler it gets for me. Daniel, any final words?
That's all I have. I hope to see everyone tomorrow evening. Everyone who has attended tonight will receive an invite. So please come out to get your tool.
Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everyone. Bye.
All right.